She was known as the pistol-packing madam, according to her story told by local author Bob Love. But she was also known for her survival of a snowstorm, albeit not completely, which is why she's also known as Peg Leg Annie. There's been stories and there's been songs about Annie, and there have been restaurants named for her. But it was on this day in Idaho history, Peg Leg Annie was brought into this world and unfortunately also taken out, with 76 years of strong woman survival in between.
They left home on a Friday, in spite of the storm rolling round.
So begins the folk song about an Idaho mining and mountain folk, Felicia Ann McIntyre Morrow.
Bottle of whiskey, and a plan to go dancing in town.
But who would become better known as Peg Leg Annie. The song begins there, but Annie's story doesn't. Annie was born on September 13, 1858. When her mother died just after delivery, Annie and her brother were raised by her father, Stephen, and his second wife. They moved to Idaho in 1864, where a partnership in the Golden Star mine led to her father being shot dead in the street by that partner, leaving Annie alone at the age of 16. A year later, in 1876, she was married to Thomas Morrow, a man twice her age. Annie gave birth to 5 kids, but Thomas was apparently abusive, so Annie left him and the kids. Desperate to make it on her own, Annie dabbled in saloon dancing, which eventually led to owning brothels in the boom towns of Rocky Bar and Atlanta. And that's where we get to the peg leg part of the saga.
18 miles to walk in those steep mountain roads.
As the song and the story goes, in 1896, after more than a few shots of whiskey, Annie and a friend, a fellow lady of the night known as Dutch M, decided to walk from Atlanta to Rocky Bar to go to a dance. A march of more than 15 mountainous miles. Even though it was May, a late spring storm rolled in and dumped snow for 2 days. Not properly dressed, the two women struggled. Dutch M didn't make it. Annie was carried back to Atlanta 3 days later with severely frostbitten feet. Both had to be amputated. Done with dancing, Annie then went to work doing laundry for the miners of Rocky Bar, while wearing woolen pads over her stumps, making money and a name for herself in the process. Peg Leg Annie passed away from cancer on her 76th birthday, September 13th, 1934. She's buried in Morris Hill Cemetery in Boise, next to her husband.
Yeah, you and Dutch M can move on again and dance your troubles away.
You know, there's kind of a gap between being a peg leg laundress and Annie leaving this world. Annie was apparently able to save a good chunk of change washing clothes for miners, and she was able to also find love again. She fell for a drifter who rolled into Rocky Bar and convinced Annie to let him take her 20-year savings to a bank in San Francisco. You can guess what happened next. She never saw that man or her $12,000 ever again. Well, it was prohibition at the time, so to make ends meet again, Annie resorted to illegal liquor, a peg leg bootleg business, if you will. That was where the pistol packing part came in. She never let anyone near her stash without paying or face the point of a gun. She lived the end of her life destitute, though, surviving on what groceries and wood miners would drop off at her cabin.